Hello and welcome to Galen Data's Medical Device Innovation Webinar Series. My name is Moshe Poltrak and I'll be your host today. I'm really excited for today's discussion because we're joined by three medical device pioneers. Ed McCarthy, Senior Director of Business Development for Somnera, a US-based therapeutic device maker for obstructive sleep apnea, and an early Galen Data client. Greg O'Grady is CEO and co-founder of Alimetry, a gastric diagnostic device and their Galen Data's first international client out of New Zealand. Chris DuPont, founder and CEO of Galen Data. And today we'll follow Ed and Greg's journey to the cloud, how they successfully led their companies to implement cloud connectivity and the business value they enjoy. To introduce Ed, he has over 20 years of business development, marketing, and sales experience in the medical device and healthcare industries. Before joining Somnera, he was the Director of International Business Development for USGI Medical, where he led their 500-patient pivotal study and drove growth of their technology in Europe. Ed has also held executive management positions with providers of assisted living, skilled nursing, and memory care such as Emeritus and the Ensign Group. He completed his undergraduate studies at California State University, Chico, and he earned his MBA at the Marshall School of Business at the University of Southern California. Ed, can you give us a quick description of Somnera and the Somnera system?
Sure. Hey, thank you, and thank you everyone who's joining us. Somnera is a medical device that was recently developed and released in the US beginning of the year. It is developed to treat obstructive sleep apnea. And for those that may not know, that is a common problem globally, where throughout the night, a patient's airway actually closes and they have sleep events where it completely closes or partially closes. And there's a whole industry of, you may be familiar with CPAP. You may have heard that on commercials that are out there. Well, we're an alternative to CPAP, and our device looks like the device that's in the bottom left corner of the screen, where we have a device that sits on the bedstand. It has a fan that's attached to a hose that is attached to a mask that you wear throughout the night. What it does is it provides positive airway pressure to keep your airway open so that you could sleep through the night and be healthy. There's a lot of long-term side effects that are associated with not treating sleep apnea, and it's a huge market that we're excited to get into. You may not know this, but sleep is actually the most connected medical device that's currently out there. So we're a new company coming into an industry that has really pioneered connectivity. So that device that's sitting on the bedstand, it's collecting information all night long. And in the past, people used to have a little SD card that they'd take out of the back of the device, and they'd either bring that entire thing or this SD card to their physician, who would download it, a month later or several months later, and look at how they were doing and try to manage them and keep them compliant and things of that nature. Well, now all of that is done wirelessly, and actually it's been being done wirelessly for the last 10 years, where there's a wireless modem or a cellular modem in these devices, and all of that data is being sent to a cloud database in real time. So now physicians can get Word or DME providers if someone is struggling or if there's weird data coming through, and they could be more active and proactive in managing patients real time. They could also change the settings on the device. There's a lot of great things that connectivity has brought into sleep, and that has evolved as sleep has embraced connectivity. So the patients can look at this data and track how they're doing. And like I mentioned, the physicians and distributors and even insurers are very interested in looking at this data, making sure that they're getting their money for investing in providing sleep apnea treatment to their patients. So in a nutshell, connectivity is huge for us as a new entrant coming into this market. We knew that we needed it, and we needed to find the right partner that could help us with the resources that we had, find a way to provide this. and we're very happy with the result that we got from Galen data. I'm sure we'll get more into it as we go through the presentation. Thank you.
Fantastic. And knowing several people with OSA, really seeing this device and how different it is from what else is out there, really cool. Moving on to Greg O'Grady. Greg is a professor of gastrointestinal surgery from Auckland, New Zealand. He previously completed a PhD at the Auckland Bioengineering Institute and is a technical expert in gastrointestinal physiology and diagnostic sensing. He has more recently focused his career on medical device development and entrepreneurship. He co-founded Alimetry in 2019 and serves as its CEO. Ed, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you please tell us a bit about Alimetry and about the product that you've developed?
Yeah, so good morning. Bright and early in New Zealand. It's great to be part of this webinar, and thank you for inviting me. So Alimetry stands for Alimentary Telemetry, and we build wearable diagnostic devices for the gut. What you see on the screen here is our first product. It's called gastric Alimetry, and this device is for patients suffering from gastric symptoms. So a lot of people, at least 1 in 10, carry around with them some chronic symptoms of gastric dysfunction, things like functional dyspepsia, which means chronic indigestion, and nausea and vomiting, patients who have pain after eating and bloating and these kind of things. And at the moment, the diagnostic space for these problems, which are extremely common, is very poor. A lot of clinicians, we see these patients, and it's very hard to reach an objective diagnosis. There's very little data. So we end up making symptom-based diagnoses, and that leads to a lot of trial and error therapy, which is often ineffective. So what we're doing is we're building a wearable device that's able to sense non-invasively the activity of the stomach through the skin. And this is based on a lot of science that's come out of our university here in New Zealand over the last decade. And the device consists of different parts. It's got this sensor patch that sticks over the epigastrium that you can see there, and that connects to this wearable reader device. The patient during the test fills in their symptoms on this app, a screen of which is shown here as well. And at the end of the test, all of that data, the electrophysiology and the symptom data from the app, goes up to the cloud, where we have algorithms that spin back a report for the clinician. And they use that to help them reach a diagnosis of gastric dysfunction. Yeah, so it's an exciting time for our company, and we're delighted to partner with Galen Data. So I look forward to talking more about that during the webinar.
It's such a cool technology. Thank you, Greg, and thank you so much for, I know it's pretty early by you, so thanks for joining us. Moving on to Chris DuPont, a founder and CEO of Galen Data. Chris has been at the forefront of medical device innovation for the past 25 years, during which time he has developed expertise in software development, design controls, and regulatory compliance. Chris co-authored Galen Data's patent application, Systems and Methods to Automate Transfer Storage and Analysis of Medical Device Data. Chris has a master's in electrical engineering from Oklahoma State University with a concentration in intelligent software systems. Thank you, Chris, for being here, and please tell us a little bit more about Galen Data.
Sure, but I'm super excited to be here, and I just want to again thank our guests, Ed and Craig. We've had many calls, technical calls over the last few years, and I'll share a little bit how we met both companies, but it's an honor and privilege for us to be working with you guys. You're super fun to work with. We're super excited about your technology. It's literally world changing. My background, I've done medical device software most of my professional life. We saw a need, companies were coming to us, and we built a platform. Galen Data is a product. It's a purpose-built, scalable, configurable platform, turnkey for the medical device industry. We will realize that most medical devices aren't connected. That's still true today. These companies are making that an exception. And Galen Data is ISO 13485 certified. That's a globally recognized quality management system that most medical devices companies will eventually get certified to. And we're purpose-built. We're purpose-built for the medical device industry. And Galen designs and operates as a Class 3 medical device. And again, I'm really looking forward to this webinar. Thank you, Moshe, for that.
I want to go to the backstory of these medical devices. Where did the idea originally come from? We'll start with Greg. You know, really amazing technology, really innovative. How did you come up with the idea? How did you see the market opportunity or the need for it? Give us a little bit of the backstory, please.
Oh yeah, well, in terms of the clinical need, part of it grew out from my own personal experience of seeing these patients and the frustration that's out there at the moment in the gastroenterology field about diagnosing gastric dysfunction. And it's been very difficult for us to reach an objective diagnosis. So we actually started researching this. It's been about 10 years in heavy research development out of the University of Auckland, and also my colleague Garabans out of San Diego was also working on similar sorts of things. So we're working on the science for a long time, and we realized that we had something new to offer that was quite profound, and worked away on the technical side, then trying to get it working non-invasively, because we have been doing very invasive science on the stomach itself through surgical incisions and things. And eventually the technology evolved and the science evolved to show that we had something that was genuinely useful to clinicians. And at that time, we realized it was time to spin out a company and try to commercialize this in order to bring it to the world. And that was about 2 years ago, a little over actually. And yeah, we've been able to move really fast in that time since.
2 years, that's pretty fast for a medical device company. So kudos to you. Ed, how about you? Can you tell us a little bit more about the genesis of Somnera?
Sure. So it took us a little longer than you, Greg. The idea of Somnera actually came about, gosh, in 2013, where our founders are part of a group that's incubated and spun off a number of different medical device companies. They got our concept of looking at CPAP, looking at obstructive sleep apnea, and really trying to figure out how can we, when you look at that device and the amount of people that get it, go through all the friction of getting a diagnosis and getting the unit, and then stop using it within the first couple of weeks, that there just had to be a better way. Many of the problems that we were able to identify all revolved around the excessive airflow that CPAP needs as a requirement to provide positive airway pressure for the different pressure settings throughout the night to treat the disease. So our founders were able to come up with a valve-based approach that drastically reduced the amount of airflow and changed the breathing experience completely. They got it through feasibility, and then in 2017, really were at a point where they needed to get a team around this now proven concept and to work to commercialize it. So that's when I was brought on board, and a number of the members of the team, our CEO, in advance of that, to really get behind this device, get it through the trials that we needed to conduct, and make sure that it was connected, get the right partner, get all these moving parts in place at once to charge forward. We were fortunate to get our first approval on the concept in 2018, but our commercial approval came on the back of that in a 510K submission, and that's where we utilized all the great work that Galen did and the connectivity element to put forth our first commercial device. So that, in a nutshell, is how Somnera was able to launch just at the beginning of this year.
Very cool. Chris, can you tell us a little bit about the evolution of Galen data?
Well, sure. It started long ago when I worked for a medical device company here in Houston. That we built a class 3 neurostimulator to treat epilepsy. And 15 years ago, we were struggling with getting data. Most medical devices aren't connected. That's still true today. And when we had an issue, we'd have to fly engineers out, support clinical trials. We'd have to supply, I'd have to go out in the field and support trials from there. When we had an issue, a high lead impedance, misprogramming event, it would take us 6 weeks to get the data back. And it was just very frustrating. You have to coordinate with the doctor's office. They're busy. You have to get access to the equipment. Sometimes that's not easy. Our sales field, folks in the field didn't always have access. They didn't always understand the problem. The fastest we ever got a critical issue back, the data back, because we were, like Ed said, they squirted their information to a flashcard. So did we. We had a physician tablet called the physician programmer. The fastest we ever got the data back that I remember was 2 weeks. And then you'd go through the analysis of the data, and it just was a solvable problem. And then, you know, cell phones like we have today weren't really there. Today, everybody's connected. We live in a connected world. To me, it's just crazy that most medical devices aren't connected. And so we solved a problem. I left and started a life science division and a NASA contractor doing class 2 and class 3 medical devices. Developing software for the space shuttle is very similar to developing software for the medical device. Back in the day, we're sending commands to the space shuttle at 250 miles in low Earth orbit. It's a risk, an intolerant risk environment. Medical device, we're sending commands to a device not at 250 miles in outer space, but 2.5 inches in inner space. Still, if you mess up, you hurt somebody in both of those environments. And so dipping into the NASA technology we have and the expertise was very easy to build a life science division. About 4 years ago, companies like Ed and Greg were coming to us to build a FDA compliant cloud, and we did on a one-off at $500,000 a pop, and that's just for the design and development. That doesn't include the operational cost. It could be another $500,000. And so Ed and I crossed paths, and by that time we had the vision for Galen, and you know, one thing I love about Ed is that they had deep expertise in medical device, and they saw the value proposition, and we created a platform, and the rest is history. And so now we have a platform that makes it easy and affordable, and we also drive down risk. Software, and you usually don't get the bugs out of a system until version 3, and so we're on version 20. Every day Galen lives, we drive down risk. Time is the true test of maturity in any software system.
Very cool. So Greg, Ed, when did you realize that connectivity would be important for your medical device?
Yeah, really early for us. After we, it's kind of from day one, we decided to build in connectivity. It was kind of a no-brainer in the diagnostic space. You know, there's many things that the connectivity allows. One of the main ones, of course, is that it unlocks the power of data. You have this ability to capture data from every device you're operating, and then utilize that data to improve the product and service that you offer for the customer and ultimately for the patient. And so that power for us is incredibly valuable for iteration and improving the future direction of the product as well. But it also allows you to diagnose the devices themselves out in the field and do that post-market surveillance that's becoming so important. And so by setting up the cloud server, you have the ability to do that as well. It's kind of what Chris was alluding to. So yeah, I mean, for us, it was an immediate decision, and it was definitely the right one. There's no doubt about that. Unlike in the sleep space, the GI space is very far behind in this area of connectivity. Very few devices are connected. So it also allowed us to stand apart a little bit from other things that are happening in the field.
And how do the patient benefit from that connectivity piece?
So ultimately, the patient benefits from the quality of our diagnostic product, the device, and what it supplies to the clinician. And because this is so new and unique that we're doing, and we're learning so fast, the ability to capture that data and learn off that data and improve our algorithms and products ultimately will lead to a better solution. And that'll just keep happening over time. The more data we get, the better we'll get, and the better the experience for the patient.
Gotcha. Ed, how about with Somnera?
Yes, so as I had alluded, we were coming into a market where connectivity has been around, and one could argue they really kind of helped pioneer connectivity for many of the medical devices. So we knew we had to have it to show up to the dance, if you will, and really needed to find the right partner that could help us with the resources that we had to be able to offer this, you know, full suite of connectivity that can come into a market that's really established and provide the same information, but do it at a way that's efficient and easy for our customers and our providers that are using our device. Connectivity, again, is a benefit because it enables patients to engage with their therapy. They get a sleep score at the end of every night that is trended, so they could make sure that you know, things are going well and kind of self-reinforce their therapy. And then again, from a provider standpoint, these individuals want to make sure that the customer or their patient is getting the therapy that they need. They're able to look at how the device is performing, how long people are sleeping, different bits of data to make sure that the device is operating properly. And then we're able to send out updates if there's a firmware change on the device. Well, we're able to do that through Galen. So the platform is extremely valuable just on many levels throughout our value proposition. And you think about right now, we have an app that Galen helped create that is sending our sleep data from our device to the smartphone up to the cloud. And again, there's going to be changes in the phones that are available. 5G is coming down the pike. People or different manufacturers are getting different operating systems. And so constantly we'll be working with Galen to make sure that we're thinking about these things and that we're making sure that the platform is up and running and able to take these in as these new offerings come down the road. So connectivity and having a good partner is critical.
Thank you. Greg, you had talked about the benefits of the patient and or diagnostic accuracy and also being able to do device monitoring. What would, if you didn't have device connectivity, how different would your conversation be with physicians if you're looking at selling your device into the clinical practice?
Yeah, I think clinicians in the GI field, they haven't got a lot of reference points for this kind of thing, actually. So it is new and it's emerging. So, but there's no doubt they can see that this is where things are moving, and they're excited about it. The conversations we had, they're excited to see a connected medical device and the power that might bring. As Ed said as well, the ability to update the device and provide improvements as well. They can see the benefit of that, particularly for a new technology that will change over time. So yeah, we've had a great reception, about what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I imagine so. I mean, there's a lot more data available to them, right?
Exactly.
Chris, so we had heard about the ability to do firmware updates, device monitoring, a better experience for patients and clinicians, and also better diagnostic or therapeutic abilities in the device. From your perspective, in your experience of doing this as a platform, but also having done this, one-offs for many years, tell us a little bit more about your perspective on that and where you see this, where it came from, where you see it going.
Sure. Craig mentioned something very important, and it's called post-market surveillance. And so sometimes it's very rigorous. Sometimes if you're a medical device company, you have to do some form of post-market. At minimum, checking on complaints, but you might be required to do a formal study or a patient registry from the FDA. How do you do that if you're not connected? It's very laborious. You have to go out and collect information manually. If you're connected, it's very easy to do post-market surveillance. You can get a status, and I'm sure Ed's doing it every day. He's collecting information on his device. If you have a component failure, if the battery isn't able to hold a charge, if there's something, if you're providing a therapy and you find that something's not working right, more importantly, just as importantly, I think, is post-market surveillance is compliance. Class 3 medical devices typically are implanted, but what about the devices that aren't implanted? I worked with a company that provided therapy 20 minutes a day. In operations, what I call out in the wild, you might not see the same results you did in a very controlled clinical study. It's not because the device isn't working, it's because people aren't using it as prescribed. But how do you know that? You don't know that if you're not connected. So there's 1,001 reasons in my mind that there's huge value, and it's just, we live in a connected world, and the FDA requires certain things, and connectivity just makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So you knew that you wanted connectivity in the device early. At what point did you think about whether to bring in an outsourced partner or to build it in-house? I guess we'll start with you, Ed.
So early on, we knew that we needed to find a partner. We did not have the capability to do this in-house. And so the mission was to, we identified what we needed. We kind of saw what the market expected. And the mission was to go and find a partner that could help us. One of the things that early on we wanted to make sure that we factored into the decision was the regulatory aspect of this device. So the right partner for us was going to be one that when we got to the end of the project, that device would make it through the review of the FDA, and that everyone had skin in the game and ownership on that happening on a very aggressive timeline.
Okay. Greg?
Yeah, likewise. We decided very early. What we're trying to do is pretty complex. My regulatory partner tells us all the time it's actually 5 devices, not 1. We've got an app and a reader, and we've got a sensor and the cloud, and then we've got an algorithm. And there's a lot going on in the startup. And when we were laying out the project plans and horizons, we just took a really serious look at what were our core elements we had to do ourselves that were our unique value and our unique IP. And then what were the parts that we could hand off to experts and trust them to do a much better job than we could ever do it, in a way that would overall be the most efficient and give us the best result. And obviously one of those key elements was the connectivity through the cloud, and that we identified very early that was not within our wheelhouse. It's not something we can do. It would be an incredibly complex piece of work and time-consuming piece of work. So yeah, we immediately decided that one we would partner on. And yeah, we were delighted to find Galen. They've been a fantastic partner for us.
Was there a moment where you considered, let's build this internally?
No, there were many moments where we thought we're very glad we didn't build this internally.
Yeah, I'll echo that.
When you find out how major things like cybersecurity are, it's so easy to underestimate them. And I was talking to my lead developer the other day about, just before this webinar, trying to work out how long it would have taken us and how many people we would have needed. And we're probably underestimating it, but we think it would have taken a couple of years to get something operational. And at least, if we wanted to bring that forward, maybe 3 pretty serious people to build all the different parts, the front end, the back end, the server, the app connectivity, the integration. There's just so much to do. Cybersecurity that it was definitely the right decision for us.
Yeah, we same exact ditto to what Greg said. We did look at it for a very short amount of time in terms of our ability to pull it off in our timeline, and just wanted to make sure that we found the right partner that could help us on all the different fronts that were important to ultimately getting the approval and the timeline that we're looking at.
Chris, there are customers that come to Galen Data after having attempted to build it themselves, right? As opposed to Greg and Ed, who were smart enough to start out with, we need a partner for this. What is their experience usually like, where they've started, or they've done it, or they've tried to do it, and then they're coming to Galen Data? How is it different from Greg and Ed's experience?
That's not theoretical. It's a real use case that we've experienced. Is we had a company in Austin, very, very cool technology, and they hacked out their own AWS solution, but no design controls. Both of these companies in front of us, they know the regulatory space. They understand the trials and tribulations in front of them. And there's something called design controls, 820.30. There's a ton of regulations and guidance documents. And so, yeah, we could probably hack something out, but it's all the documentation, the risk analysis, the formal design controls, verification and validation. Those are 2 different things, but you both have to do them. And so if you've never been through that experience, you have no idea the challenges that lie in front of you. Moshe, I have 2 stories that I would like to share about these 2 companies. Would that be okay?
Go right ahead.
So I distinctly remember when the first conversation I had with Ed, and Ed was telling me about this revolutionary technology, and I thought it was so cool. And Galen was still, we were a corporation, we were still early. And then Ed said, I'd like to do, one of the things we need to do, Chris, is early pilot studies for our device. And I'm like, of course. And it was so clear to both of us. I mean, we just hit everything, all cylinders on what he was trying to achieve and what we could help him with. Well, then COVID hit us. And a lot of my friends are in clinical trials, and they had to shut down their trials because they couldn't send humans out to do the controls. Somnera was able to continue their early pilot studies because they were collecting data real time. Ed, is there any comments, or was there any value in that? And that was a totally unforeseen event, but they kept marching on.
Yeah, you know, the thing that gets you, you don't know what you don't know. That's an example of something that we didn't, we can't say we were smart enough to foresee, or nobody knew what was coming. At any rate, it was of huge value. You know, we placed the timeline as a sacred oath that we were working towards, all of us, and to be able to continue through that really without a glitch, because of the way that it was designed to work. You know, it's hard to put a price on that, but we'd still be, you know, trying to figure it out if we had tried to do it on our own, that's for sure.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the other story I like to tell about Greg's company is we discovered a research paper, and as I was reading through it, it had this device with 6 leads connected to the stomach. And because back when we were doing epilepsy studies, we do EEG studies, and to me it was clear it was an EEG for the stomach. We reached out and didn't really have any contact. About 6 months later, we get this call from New Zealand. And I'm like, cool, I don't have any friends in New Zealand. And sure enough, it was the same company that they changed. I think they changed their name, so we didn't recognize it immediately. But they had this basically an EEG for the stomach with 6 electrodes. They had a 3D printed housing that covered up the electronics, and I immediately identified with the potential of that. And then we struck up a conversation. We worked together for about 1.5 years. They were flying underneath the radar, and about 3-4 weeks ago, they popped up above the radar. And for the first time, I saw the final project. It was what they showed earlier in the slide deck. It was an array of 64 electrodes plus a couple others in this array. Craig, could you kind of give a little example of how you went from that prototype to this very quick commercial FDA cleared device? I mean, that's so incredible.
Yeah, well, CE cleared. We're still working on the
CE
FDA.
cleared. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's been an amazing and enjoyable experience actually. But the reason we were able to go so fast and in such a linear fashion is because we've done this background of research for 10 years, and we had a very clear idea from the outset of the problems we were trying to solve and the steps we would need to do that. And so we were able at the start of the project to really set up a very clear timeline and a very clear, aggressive development plan. And then again, work out which ones we wanted to do and which ones we would partner on. And by working with several excellent partners, not only Galen, but also excellent partners for some other key pieces of the puzzle, we were able to just really compress the timelines and work very aggressively to get it through. And yeah, we just had this great fun. We've got a great designer on board who helped us make the product both really usable, but also quite beautiful. And we're extremely proud of the result from our hardworking team. It's just an exciting time. So yeah, thanks, Chris, for being a partner on that journey.
It's our pleasure.
That's the name of today's conversation, Journeys to the Cloud. So we're all on that journey one way, right? One stage or another. So going back a little bit to, you've made the decision that your device is going to be connected to the cloud, and you've come to the realization that, you know, we're going to rely on experts for this. We're going to outsource this to a third-party provider. We're not going to build this ourselves. What were some of the questions that you began asking of potential partners, and what were some of the criteria that you were using to vet or factor in your decision-making process around, you know, who should be that partner? Greg, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, so we wanted someone who understood startup culture and, you know, the questions we had, and that requires flexibility on their behalf, but also the ability to be a genuine partner, not just offer a one-size-fits-all off-the-shelf solution. We really needed to be able to customize what we were doing, integrate it with our own app. We've got our own firmware running on the device, and the connectivity between the firmware, the app running on an iPad mini, and then the cloud has been very complex to glue that together. And Galen have been great at getting that app connectivity, helping us, educating us on how to do that. And then also on the server side, getting the portal up and running in a customized fashion that can run our algorithm on the Galen cloud in order to generate a report that sits inside the portal, and the clinician can log in and access that report. So it was a complex puzzle. And so we really wanted a partner who understood where a startup was coming from and could partner and help us, educate us on the areas we didn't know about to glue that together. And that's why we chose Galen.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
jump in as well. Second, the notion about that entrepreneurial spirit, startup culture. We were looking for a company that was very nimble and would work with us aggressively on a timeline. So we liked what we heard from Galen, and we also wanted a company that had done it before, had a track record of getting a device like ours through the FDA, because this is our first. We've been in med device. I won't take too much time, but with different devices, and I've been in it a long time, and the members of our team. But this was going to be our first app in cloud submission, and we just couldn't afford to learn on this one. We needed to make sure as best we could that it would get through flawlessly, and it did. So we wanted to make sure that that component and that experience helped us define and think of requirements that we didn't think of to make sure that we had the right device that could get through in the time that we had. And then lastly, again, I know I've hit on it, but just the regulatory component. What I found with the others that we looked at is that we had folks that really could do app in cloud, but then when it came to, okay, well, can you guarantee this is gonna, as best you can, get through the FDA? And that's where many of the companies kind of would backpedal or say, we could refer you to another, you would need to bring that in. And all I could think of was, again, like in a room or in a meeting where, we're looking at a timeline or something to get done or something that, was unanticipated and delays. And being able to have kind of everyone that needed to make that decision on the call, on the webinar, or on the teleconference at once to help us kind of move through and address situations as they came up was a huge factor that ultimately tipped us to move with Galen.
Very cool. And Chris, from your perspective, what's it been like working with Ed from Somnera, Greg from Alimetry? Well, the honest truth.
I worked for Ed for probably 2 years until I learned he was a surfer. And so I thought that was cool. They both are absolute experts in their field. They both are bringing very novel technology to the commercial market. We want to be part of that solution and help them. What was nice is they knew about regulatory. And so we didn't have to tell them about, design controls. They said, let's just get it done. And so in both of the cases, we worked seamlessly together. Ed, they both, have a great sense of humor, and we just knuckled down and got it done. And there were some challenges. Nothing ever goes perfect, but we worked together and we put our heads together and we solved those challenges as they came up one at a time. It was an honor and our privilege to work with both of these companies. And, as engineers, we want to give back, and just by helping these companies help other humans is what they're doing. They're helping other humans. It's a really, really cool thing and gratifying. So it's our pleasure to be working with these guys. It's super cool.
Cool. And Ed, this is not your first medical device. And Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, this is not your first either, right? So you both kind of have been to the dance before and came to your thought processes on this device with that experience. What advice would you give to a founder of a medical device company who's maybe doing this for the first time? They haven't kind of gone through it once before. Any advice for first-time medical device founder or executive?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is rely on the help of experts. Ed said it before, you don't know what you don't know. And there's a lot of pitfalls that can be very costly in time and money and opportunity. And so just get as many wise experts you can around key parts of your product and the chain of that product in order to really at the outset plan exactly what you need to do in the steps. Otherwise, if you discover later that you missed something critical around the design controls, that can be, for example, that can be very painful to try and backpedal.
Ed, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Greg mentioned, and I think I've brought up a little bit about factoring in, how many different entities that you can get together to, get on board and get you to the end of your goal. And if you're able to, again, reduce the amount of meetings or people that are needed to finally make a decision. Again, the trade-off is, you are putting more of your eggs in one basket, so you need to look at a track record and things of that nature, which again, we felt comfortable with moving forward with Galen on all of those fronts once we got to know them and their team, and started to really look at the way they approached our solution and the questions they asked and the great insight that they provided as we worked with them on the deal and ultimately started.
Okay. So what have you accomplished to date in your relationship with Galen Data, and where do you go from here? What are your next cloud connectivity efforts look like? Ed, I guess you can go first.
Sure. If you look at the sleep apnea devices and the established players, they're multi-billion-dollar companies. They have a number of different product lines. You have different people with different sized faces and shapes and preferences. Some anatomically have a need for a bigger face mask. Some can get away with one with a smaller profile. What Moshe might like, Chris is going to hate. He's going to want something completely different. We are going to look to add on a bunch of different product lines. And when you look at connectivity, right now these devices, dare I say it, they're dumb. They're not. They're connected, but there's so much more value, being able to tap into the data that's sitting on that nightstand, just the sleep data, to help with our algorithm using artificial intelligence. That is in its infancy right now. That is going to change the game for sleep apnea. When you look at all of the storefront, if you will, right now on a patient's face with a mask, none of that's connected currently. Well, with new technology, chips, piezoelectric, like there's all kinds of ways to get data, even wearables where you can get O2 sat. Right now, we're just looking at pressure and flow. There's going to be so much more data that we'll be able to incorporate into devices, bring into the cloud, look at, use it to have our device really cater its therapy delivery to the individual. And again, like I mentioned earlier, all of the different ways to deliver that data to the cloud are going to be changing with new phones and new operating systems. So having a partner that is one step ahead there and that can help you foresee and react to some things that are going to come up as technology is changing is something that I look forward to working with Galen on for a long time. And we look forward to bring on distributors in different countries that we're talking with right now. So the ability to have a platform that can scale outside the US and everywhere in between. It's just nice to know that all is possible.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Ed. Greg, did you want to share your opinion for the future?
So for Alimetry, it's been at the moment about building this platform that we've managed to achieve and we're very proud of. We've got our app and our device and sensor and everything, and we're scaling that at the moment to get it out into the market. And but it's very exciting because now the company, once it's built that platform, can really look at moving beyond that and into the data, which is what Ed was talking about as well, and start to really generate data at scale. And our focus will then shift towards that data and what it offers. I think it was The Economist, one of my friends likes to say, data is the new oil, and this is where it's going. And we're also very focused on building that once we've got the data coming in, the AI capabilities that will allow us to really improve not only the product, but the whole field's understanding of these disorders that have been so complex in the stomach and difficult to get a handle on for clinicians. And yeah, patients are just so dissatisfied at the moment that we're pretty confident that we will be able to provide part of the solution to improving that problem through this combination of the platform of the product and eventually the solutions from the data. And so, yeah, it's an exciting phase for us, and Galen's really part of that platform and will enable that data phase that we're growing into at the moment.
Excellent. I'd like to ask the audience another question. If we can move forward, we will have further thoughts from Greg and Ed and Chris, and also a Q&A session. But if I can ask the audience, what is your connected device posture right now? Do you have a connectivity platform? Do you have one that needs improvement? Are you in the planning phases? Is it too far out for you, or does not apply? So please take a moment to answer the poll. Tell us, where you are currently with your connected medical device status. So next steps, again, we're going to come back to Greg and Ed in just a moment, but some things that you can do right now to help with your path to medical device connectivity. Go ahead in the handout section, download the Galen Data Definitive Guide to Medical Device Connectivity. You have lots of great information in there about everything you need to know to get connected to the cloud. We've also shared case studies, written case studies that we've done with Alimetry and Somnera that go into a little bit more detail about some of the things that we were discussing today. Go ahead and read those. I want to share with you also, we have what's called the Medical Device Partner Ecosystem. If you go to galendata.com and you hit that about in the top right corner, you'll see partners. And this ecosystem is, we've assembled the best in every class of medical device, whether it's manufacturing, quality, compliance, etc. We have partners that we recommend that work together with us to help you in your medical device journey. So go ahead and check that out. And then finally, next month's webinar we'll be doing in partnership with Greenlight Guru as part of their True Quality Summit series. So the next webinar, June 24th, that's a Thursday, not a Tuesday, as we usually do it, and that's at 9 a.m. Central. So that will be about protecting your data to, from, and in the cloud. So go ahead and register for that now. The link is in the chat window, so you can go ahead and register for that now. That's going to be a really interesting discussion next month. So final thoughts before we turn it over to Q&A. I guess we'll go around and starting with Chris, what else would you like to share with our audience today?
Before I share something, I just have to comment on what Greg said. I used to say today's gold is the data, but Greg said today's data is the oil. Being from Texas, I like that saying better. So hopefully you're okay if I borrow that. We live in a connected world. To be competitive, especially in medical device, we have to have connectivity. I think it just makes sense that why can't we have access to our medical data or patient data? And then as both of these companies said, first you had to build the devices and the platform to get connected. That's just the starting point. Alimetry, 64 sensors, the data that they're going to capture, and once they unleash the power of analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, they're going to discover all kinds of things that will help improve the human condition. They're just scratching the surface. Somnera, the same way. I think Ed said he's just looking at 2 sensor data. Imagine when they can get 5, 6, 7, 8. They'll be able to improve the sleep conditions. If you don't sleep, you're not mentally alert. So again, Somnera is just scratching the very surface. They've built the platforms. The future is unbounded. The opportunity is unbounded for how these 2 companies are going to help humans. And that's super exciting for me, just to be part of that journey. And it's an honor for us to be here working with these companies.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I totally agree. For us, connectivity is at the center of what we do and what we offer. And yeah, we're very excited with the platform we've built and can't wait to get into that next phase as well.
Yeah, I echo the same sentiments. Connectivity really was defined in this industry a while ago, and there's so much more value that we're going to be able to bring as the next generation of devices is brought to market. So again, having a partner that you could scale with, that has experience. It's good to know what you know and what you don't know. So if you're looking at timelines and needs from different stakeholders to get you through that, those are all things that you want to consider as you're looking for that right partner.
Okay, thank you for that. So I am seeing some questions that have come in from the audience, and feel free to go ahead and continue to ask those questions. We're going to hit those one at a time. So the first question here is, how did your technical team work with Galen data? What was that process like? Greg or Ed, feel free to jump in.
So,
So you go ahead, Ed.
okay. So the short answer is, very, very well and efficiently. We were able to set up, weekly calls or bi-weekly calls as we were kind of going towards different milestones to make sure that everyone was on the same page. Again, while we had technical, also we had to make sure that we covered and were thinking about regulatory implications of decisions that we were making, tests that would need to be done, lead time for those tests, like all the everything, all of that was in the same room as we worked real closely on hitting, dates that we were setting for requirements to kind of get things in action. Chris alluded to the study that we were running. We needed to have this in a state where we could start that study and then finish it, crunch the data, and get to our submission. And so there were a lot of moving parts, and Galen was fluid and real responsive with our technical team to make sure that we were thinking about the things that we needed to get to the milestone successfully.
Cool. Is there a time in the near future where there's competition between accuracy of cloud databases?
I'll take that one. No, because it's not the accuracy of the cloud databases. It's really the accuracy of the algorithms that run in the cloud, such as analytics. I studied artificial intelligence in graduate school, and the FDA just cleared the first real learning algorithm. So again, analyzing the data, but the real another opportunity is using these training algorithms. The FDA is very cautious about, and rightly so, about approving those or clearing those algorithms, but that is in our future. And you can put safety valves in those algorithms, and you can bound their learning parameters. And so it's not so much of the accuracy of the cloud, it's more of the accuracy of the algorithms and the contents that are contained in that cloud. It's a good question, so thank you for that, Moshe.
Okay. For a medical device, how many previous years of data need to be stored in the cloud database?
For ours, or maybe Chris?
So it seems like a general kind of compliance question. If anybody wants to, Chris, you can take that.
Yeah, it's not really related. It's how many years. So looking forward, you can store as much data as you want, but it's about verifying that you built the right system and then validating it meets the user's needs. It's more of that effort. I'm not aware of any requirement that says you have to keep data for a certain amount of time in the verification. Now, there are requirements from the quality management system that you have to keep data for a certain amount of time, but those are two different questions. So I'm not aware of any constraint where you have to keep historical data in pursuit of your regulatory clearance.
Okay, and we will follow up with the person asking offline to clarify if we answer the question or not. And to everybody else who's asking questions, if we don't get to yours, we will follow up with you offline. What regulatory challenge did you face for cloud connectivity, and how did you address cybersecurity issues? This is a loaded one. Greg, do you want to tackle it?
Yeah, maybe I'll start and then hand over to Chris. I mean, this is a great question because if I can give a piece of advice, don't underestimate cybersecurity. There's a whole hospital here in New Zealand down at the moment. The whole hospital's down because it's been hacked and held to ransom. And you saw that again in the US with that pipeline. And this is just becoming such an intense issue. Medical device companies need to be all over this. So yeah, it's a great question. We handled it by partnering with someone who knows more than us. And maybe I'll hand it over to Chris to comment on.
Right. No, I love this question, is that we all use electricity, but none of us are experts in building power plants. And so this is what we do. This is our expertise. Medical device companies such as, Craig and Ed, they need to focus on their therapy. That's their expertise. I don't understand. I'm not an expert in their therapy at all. I'm not an expert in diagnosis or sleep apnea, but we are experts, absolute experts in cloud connectivity and cybersecurity encryption. And it's not something you build once. You don't just build it and forget about it. You have to nurture it every day. Our VP of IT Ops, the very first thing he does, he looks for any type of security alerts every morning, every afternoon before he leaves, and he patches security patches. That's on us. That burden's on us. We relieve you of that burden. When you go outside of your country, you have a whole nother set of burdens. We offload all of that. So it's not a build once and forget. It's build every day, build and operate it every day, and that's what we're good at.
Very good. I think we have time for one more question, and this one is for Greg. What differentiates your medical device from others in the marketplace?
Yes, so our unique proposition is a large number of electrodes, and that allows us to better sense and locate the signals that are coming from and gives us better quality data, but also allows us to do unique things that we're only able to do with that number of channels, and particularly look at the directional movements of the gut and what's actually happening inside it, which has previously been a bit of a black box. There's no way to be able to test that previously. So that's one of our unique value propositions. And we know that data correlates with symptoms, which for our field is really important.
Excellent. Well, we are out of time. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and I especially want to thank our panelists, Greg O'Grady, Ed McCarthy, Chris DuPont. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story about cloud connectivity. And I've learned a lot, and I've enjoyed our conversation, so thank you. And the contact information for each company is up on the screen, so feel free to follow up directly if you're interested and have any further questions. And again, go ahead and download those documents that we've shared and register for next month's webinar as well about data and cybersecurity, which is what we've been just talking about. So thank you, everybody, and goodbye.